Those were the words my son screamed at me after his wife put on a full display of tears and humiliation right in front of me. It all began that Saturday evening at their home. I had gone over for a family dinner. Olivia sat on her spotless, expensive sofa wearing one of her designer dresses and that polite, fake smile she always wears whenever Daniel is watching, a smile that instantly disappears when he turns away. Dinner was tense, as usual. Olivia dominated the conversation, talking endlessly about her rich friends, her travels, and the new diamond necklace Daniel had bought her, worth $8,000. She made sure to mention the price at least 3 times, as if she wanted to carve it into my memory. As if she needed me to understand her value, or mine. I tried to eat quietly, answering when necessary, smiling when appropriate. I did everything I could to avoid conflict. But with Olivia, nothing is ever enough. She always finds a reason to turn me into the problem. "Helen, you passed me the salt without me asking for it," she said sharply, her voice edged with irritation, as if I'd done something unforgivable. I had only seen her reaching for the salt and moved it closer out of courtesy. A normal, polite gesture. But for Olivia, it became a crime. "I'm sorry, dear. I just wanted to help," I replied calmly, with the patience I've been forced to master over 3 years of enduring her disrespect. But she was already putting on her act. "You always do this. You can't help yourself. You're always interfering, always trying to control everything." Her voice rose, trembling with fake emotion, and within seconds, tears appeared in her eyes, the kind that spring up on command. Daniel put his fork down, the sound of metal on porcelain echoing in the heavy silence. He turned to me with a hardness I had never seen before, as if I were a stranger who had insulted his wife in their home. "What happened, Olivia?" he asked softly, full of concern, the same gentle tone he once used with me when he was a child, when someone hurt him at school. Only now, that tenderness was for her. For me, there was nothing but contempt. "Your mother keeps disrespecting me, Daniel," Olivia whimpered. "I can't live like this. She always makes me feel like I'm not good enough for you." She pressed her napkin to her eyes, trembling as she cried into it. A performance worthy of an award, and my son believed every word. I sat frozen in my chair, the fork still in my hand. It felt like I was watching a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I wanted to speak, to defend myself, but the words died in my throat. I knew nothing I said would matter. Daniel had already chosen his side. "Mom, you should go," he said coldly. His voice was flat, like a boss firing an employee for making a serious mistake. "I don't want you here tonight." I stood slowly. My legs trembled. My heart pounded so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I picked up my purse from the chair, moving automatically, as if my body knew I had to leave before something worse happened. "Daniel, I didn't mean to upset Olivia," I said quietly, my voice small and broken, stripped of dignity. But he didn't look at me. He was already holding his wife, whispering to her while she pretended to cry harder. He didn't even glance up as I walked to the door, didn't even look at his mother leaving his house with a shattered heart. I opened the front door, and the cold night air hit my face. But before I could step outside, his voice came again, firm, final, cutting deep. "Mom, this can't go on. Olivia's right. You're always interfering, always making her uncomfortable. Next Saturday, we're hosting a dinner. You'll come and apologize to her in front of everyone. If you don't bother coming back. I turned to face him, the same boy I'd raised alone when his father left us, the boy I'd fed when I barely had enough for myself, the boy I'd clothed in second-hand shirts so he could attend a good school. That boy was now a man who looked at me like I was an inconvenience. Apologize, or get out of my house. Those words fell on me like stones, heavy, cold, impossible to move. Behind him, Olivia appeared, no longer crying. A small, satisfied smile curved on her lips, the kind of smile that says, "I've won." I nodded. Not in submission, but in resolve. Because at that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. If they wanted an apology, I would give them one. But not the kind they expected. No, I would go to that dinner, stand before their rich friends and fake smiles, and I would say something that would make them regret every ounce of humiliation they'd ever made me feel. "It's fine, Daniel," I said softly. "I'll come on Saturday. I'll apologize to Olivia." My voice was calm, too calm. So calm that a flicker of doubt crossed his eyes. But it was too late. He had already sealed his own fate. I walked out of that house with my back straight and my eyes dry. I wouldn't cry in front of them. I wouldn't give them that pleasure. Out on the dark street, I made my way to the bus stop. The cold wind stung my face, but I barely felt it. My mind was already working, piecing together memories, connecting the signs I had ignored for too long. Because I knew things. Things Olivia thought no one else knew. Things she had hidden well, but not well enough. As the bus carried me away through the city lights, I looked out the window, 67 years old, feeling everything I had built collapsing around me. But beneath the heartbreak, something stirred again. Determination. Because that Saturday would not be the day Helen Carter bowed before a manipulative woman and a son blinded by money. It would be the day everything changed. The day the truth finally came out. There was a time when Daniel and I were inseparable. A time when he came to me for everything, his joys, his fears, his dreams. A time when I was his favorite person in the whole world. I remember the day he was born. March 29th. It was raining so heavily that the streets outside the hospital looked like rivers. I was alone. His father had walked out 2 months before, the moment he found out I was pregnant. He said he wasn't ready to be a dad, that he had other plans. I never understood those words, and I stopped trying to. Because when they placed Daniel in my arms for the first time, and he opened those deep brown eyes, I knew I didn't need anyone else. The early years were the hardest. I worked days at a laundromat and cleaned offices at night. 4 hours of sleep, sometimes less. My hands cracked from detergent, my back screamed from scrubbing floors. But every night, when I came home and saw my baby smiling from his crib, all the pain vanished. Because I was building something, a life, a chance, a future for him. Daniel was a bright child. He learned to read before the other kids. His teachers said he had a gift, that he'd go far. And I believed them. When he was 8, he won a math competition at school. I can still see him running home, clutching the diploma. "Mom. Mom. Look, I won." His face shone with pride and excitement. I hugged him so tightly that he laughed and said I was crushing him. But I couldn't let go. I couldn't stop thinking, maybe all those sleepless nights were finally paying off. That night, we celebrated with his favorite meal, spaghetti with meat sauce. We didn't have a dining table back then, so we ate on the living room floor. The sauce splattered, the noodles tangled, but we laughed like kings. He told me he wanted to be an engineer one day. He said he'd build bridges that connected cities, the biggest in the world, he promised. And I told him I believed him. From that moment, my life had a single purpose: to help him reach that dream. I worked more shifts, skipped meals, and saved every penny. Every dollar went into his education fund. When my body begged for rest, I pushed harder. When I thought I couldn't go on, I'd picture his little face and remember why I had to. As he grew older, our bond only deepened. He'd come to my room every night to talk about his friends, the girls he liked, the things that scared him. He said once, "Mom, you're the strongest person I know." He must have been 15 then. I think he felt bad that we didn't have much, that our apartment was small and my clothes were old. But I told him something I believed with all my heart. Love isn't measured in square feet or fancy things, Daniel. The two of us are enough. And he believed me. For years, he did. We used to call ourselves Team Carter. Just him and me against the world. And for a long time, it really felt that way. When the letter came, the one saying he'd earned a scholarship to university, I cried so much that Daniel thought something was wrong. He hugged me and said, "We did it, Mom. We really did it." He studied civil engineering, just like he dreamed. Graduated with honors. Got a job at a big firm, the kind of place I used to walk past and imagine him working in someday. When he got his first paycheck, he took me out to dinner. A fancy restaurant, white tablecloths, waiters in suits. "Mom," he said, holding my hand across the table, "this is for everything you did for me." He ordered wine, dessert, everything. He must have spent nearly $200 that night, the same amount I used to make in a week. I felt uncomfortable, out of place, but he was glowing. He said he'd never forget what I'd done for him. That was the last truly honest thing he ever said to me. Because not long after that, she appeared. Her name was Olivia Harris. She came into Daniel's life quietly, like a calm breeze before a storm. At first, I thought she was harmless. In fact, I wanted to believe she was good for him. Her name was Olivia Harris, a woman from a wealthy family, with all the charm and polish that money buys. Daniel met her at a business conference. He couldn't stop talking about her, how intelligent she was, how sophisticated. He said she understood him in ways no one else did. I smiled when he told me, even though something in my chest tightened. 3 months later, he brought her to meet me. It was a Saturday afternoon. I remember because I'd spent all morning cleaning the apartment and baking cookies, the way I used to when Daniel was a boy. When the doorbell rang, I wiped my hands on my apron and opened the door. Daniel stood there, smiling nervously, holding Olivia's hand. "Mom," he said, "I want you to meet someone special." And there she was, tall, elegant, wrapped in designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her perfume filled the air, heavy and expensive. She smiled politely, but her eyes measured me. In one glance, she had already decided who I was: poor, old-fashioned, beneath her. "Nice to meet you, Helen," she said. "Not Mrs. Carter." Not ma'am. Just Helen, as if we were equals, as if she had the right. I made coffee. Served the cookies. Tried to make her comfortable. But she sat stiffly, glancing at her watch, answering my questions with short, polite phrases. Daniel didn't notice, or didn't want to. He looked at her the way he used to look at me when he was little, like she was the whole world. And maybe, for him, she was. Because Olivia represented everything he'd never had: money, power, status. A doorway into a world that had always been closed to him. After that first meeting, everything started changing. At first, slowly, so slowly that I almost didn't notice. The Sunday visits stopped. Mom, I have dinner with Olivia's parents. Mom, I have a work event. Mom, Olivia and I are taking a weekend trip. There was always something. Always someone else. The calls became shorter. The laughter disappeared. And when he did come by, he seemed different. He dressed differently. Spoke differently. Even the way he looked at me changed, as if I reminded him of a life he wanted to forget. As if love had turned into embarrassment. I kept telling myself it was just a phase. That when the excitement wore off, he'd remember who had always been there for him. Who had sacrificed everything for him. But I was wrong. Olivia didn't just enter my son's life, she began to reshape it, piece by piece, until there was no space left for me. At first, she played sweet. She called me sometimes, pretended to care. But behind every word was condescension, every question a test. How's your little apartment, Helen? Still the same one? Or, do you manage all right on your pension? Each time, the words were wrapped in politeness, but they cut deep. She wasn't asking out of kindness. She was reminding me that I didn't belong in their world. Then came the day Daniel told me they were getting married. He showed up grinning, glowing like a child who had just won a prize. Mom, Olivia, and I are engaged. He waited for me to cheer, to hug him. And I did, because that's what mothers do. We swallow our fears, our doubts, our intuition, and we smile. Congratulations, sweetheart, I said. I'm happy for you. But that night, when I was alone, I cried. Not because I didn't want him to marry, but because deep down, I knew I was losing him. The wedding was grand, painfully so. They rented a ballroom that must have cost $30,000 for one night. There were flowers everywhere, a mountain of imported roses and orchids, chandeliers sparkling like diamonds. The food was exquisite, the music expensive, the people rich and proud. I wore a simple blue dress I'd bought on sale. Did my own hair. Put on the same shoes I'd worn to Daniel's graduation. When I walked into that glittering room, I felt invisible. Every look I received was the same, polite but judgmental. Like they were all wondering how Daniel came for me. Olivia's parents shook my hand as though it were a chore. Her father barely met my eyes. Her mother smiled tightly and said, "We've heard so much about you." And I could tell she didn't mean it kindly. During the ceremony, I sat in the front row, alone. No relatives, no friends who could afford to come. Just me, watching my son promise his life to a woman I didn't trust. At the reception, I was seated at a back table with distant acquaintances, people who didn't know me and didn't care to. I watched Daniel and Olivia at the head table, laughing with her family, surrounded by people who looked down on mine. When Daniel finally came over, he smiled and said, "Mom, you look beautiful tonight." A sweet lie, but one I accepted because it was all he offered me. We danced one song. His hands were warm, his eyes bright, and for 3 short minutes, I felt like I had my boy back. He whispered, "Thank you, Mom, for everything. For giving me the life you did." I wanted to tell him not to forget me, to remember where he came from. But I stayed silent. Because sometimes silence is the only dignity left. That night, as I left the glittering ballroom, I knew. The boy I raised alone was gone. And the man who took his place belonged to Olivia Harris. After the wedding, everything began to fade, quietly, almost gently at first, like colors losing their brightness. Daniel and Olivia moved into a large, beautiful house she had chosen, all white marble and glass, sitting proudly in a wealthy neighborhood where every house looked like it had a story to prove. A week after they returned from their honeymoon, I visited them. I brought a simple gift, a dinner set I'd saved up to buy. It wasn't fancy, but it was beautiful in its own modest way, cream-colored with a golden edge. Olivia opened the box, examined the plates, turned one over to see the brand, and smiled that small, icy smile of hers. "How lovely, Helen," she said. "We already have a set of fine china, but we can use these for casual occasions." Her words were soft, but I felt every syllable cut like a blade. Daniel said nothing. He just stood there, awkwardly smiling, pretending not to notice the humiliation. That's when I realized something important. He wasn't just quiet out of politeness. He was afraid. Afraid to upset her. Over the next few months, I started disappearing from their lives. The Sunday lunches we used to share became rare. Every time I called, Daniel was busy. Every time I asked to visit, there was a reason I couldn't. Olivia's parents are in town. Olivia isn't feeling well. Olivia's planning something and wants the house quiet. Olivia, always Olivia. And when I did manage to see them, I felt like an intruder in my own son's home. Olivia would correct me on the smallest things, always with that condescending smile. "Actually, Helen, Daniel doesn't like his steak cooked that way." Or, "Daniel, your mother must be mistaken. You put the tomatoes in after the sauce, remember?" Small things. Harmless on the surface. But each one was a tiny wound meant to bleed me slowly. And my son, my sweet Daniel, just sat there, nodding, sometimes even laughing along. I watched the boy who once defended me against the world turn into a man who didn't even notice when his wife disrespected me. One afternoon, I made a mistake. I went to see him without calling first. When Olivia opened the door, her face froze in annoyance. "Oh, Helen. We weren't expecting you." No come in. No warmth. Just a wall of polite rejection. I forced a smile. I just wanted to see Daniel. "It's been so long." She sighed, the kind of sigh that says you've already ruined her plans. "He's in the middle of a meeting. You can't disturb him." Something in me broke a little. "Just for a minute, please," I said. My voice trembled. I hated that it did. "Wait here," she said sharply and disappeared inside, leaving me standing on the porch like a delivery person. I stood there for 15 minutes. The neighbors passed by, glancing at me curiously, an old woman clutching her purse, waiting outside a house she didn't belong to. I felt the shame burning through my chest. Finally, Daniel came out, phone in hand, his expression tight. "Mom, you can't come without calling first." "I'm working." He didn't hug me. Didn't smile. Just scolded me like a misbehaving child. "I just wanted to see you, honey. It's been weeks." I tried to touch his arm, but he stepped back, subtle but cold. "I'll call you later, Mom. I promise." And then he closed the door. No goodbye kiss. No warmth. Nothing. I stood there on that porch for a long moment before my legs gave out. Then I walked to the bus stop, tears blurring my vision. I cried the whole way home. On the bus, surrounded by strangers pretending not to see me, I cried for the boy I'd lost. That night, sitting in my small apartment, I realized the truth. Olivia hadn't just married my son. She had conquered him. She was changing him, piece by piece, until there would be nothing left of the Daniel I once knew. The following months were worse than any pain I had ever known. Worse than when his father left. Worse than the long nights of work and exhaustion. Because this time, the wound came from my own child. I tried to talk to him again, to make him see what was happening. He agreed to meet me one afternoon, but the moment he sat down, I knew he wasn't really there. He kept glancing at his phone, impatient, irritated. When I told him how I felt, his face hardened. "Mom, don't start. Olivia has nothing to do with this." I didn't say she did, I replied softly. "But ever since you got married, everything's changed. I grew up, Mom. That's what happens. People move on. You can't expect me to be your little boy forever." His tone was cold, rehearsed, even. Words that didn't sound like his own. They sounded like hers. "I'm not asking for that," I said. "I just don't want to be treated like a stranger." He rolled his eyes. "You're so dramatic, Mom. Olivia's right. You always make things bigger than they are." I froze. Olivia's right. Those two words told me everything. She had been talking about me behind my back. Poisoning him. And he believed her. He stood up, ending the conversation. "Rebecca's waiting," he said, then caught himself. "Sorry. Olivia." He left, leaving me sitting there, staring at the door he'd closed behind him. After that, I stopped trying. Stopped calling. Stopped showing up. But the silence hurt worse. The waiting. The wondering. The weeks without a single call. I wrote him a short message one night. "Daniel, I miss you. Can we see each other?" He read it. Didn't reply for 2 days. When his response finally came, it was short. "Sorry, Mom. Been busy. Maybe next month." Next month. Like I was an appointment to be rescheduled. I started filling my time with other things, church, small outings with a kind woman named Linda, who also had children who barely visited. We'd talk about life, about loss. It helped, but only a little. Nothing could fill the emptiness Daniel had left behind. Weeks turned into months. And when he finally invited me over again, Olivia was there, as polished and poisonous as ever. She greeted me sweetly, offering tea in expensive porcelain. "Would you like sugar, Helen? You really should take better care of yourself at your age," she said softly. And Daniel laughed. He laughed at his wife's insult. That laughter told me more than any words ever could. He wasn't mine anymore. Pain has a way of turning into silence. And silence, when it lasts too long, becomes a kind of death. That's how I lived for months, quietly, politely, pretending I was fine while my heart crumbled piece by piece. Daniel's calls became rare. The warmth in his voice, gone. I had stopped asking, stopped hoping. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. I had gone to the bank to cash my pension check. On my way out, I saw her. Olivia. She was stepping out of an expensive coffee shop downtown, not with Daniel, but with a man I'd never seen before. Young. Well-dressed. Sharp. And the way she looked at him wasn't the way a married woman looks at a business contact. Something about it was wrong. They sat down at an outdoor table, talking quietly. The man handed her a folder. Olivia opened it, glanced through the papers, then gave him an envelope, thick, white, unmarked. She looked around, nervous. Her eyes darted as if to make sure no one was watching. But I was. I stood behind a lamppost, frozen. My heart pounded so hard it drowned out the city noise. When they parted, she smiled, slipped the envelope back into her purse, and walked away as if nothing had happened. I didn't move for several minutes. I wanted to believe it was innocent. That maybe she was helping someone, or dealing with work matters. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't right. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the scene in my mind, the folder, the envelope, her glance over the shoulder. For years, I had tried to convince myself I was imagining things, that I was being unfair to her. But not anymore. Something in my gut told me this was important, that this was the first loose thread in the perfect fabric of her lies. The next morning, I went to see Linda. She was the only person who listened without judging. "Linda," I said, "I think Olivia's hiding something. Something big." She looked at me with concern. "Helen, be careful. You're dealing with a woman who clearly knows how to manipulate. If she's hiding something, it could be dangerous to get involved." But I'd already made up my mind. Linda had a nephew named David Torres, a quiet, serious man who worked as a private investigator. Nothing fancy, he handled small cases, infidelity, business fraud. But he knew how to find the truth. She put me in touch with him. We met in a small, dimly lit cafe far from Daniel's neighborhood. David sat across from me with a notebook and a calm, professional voice. "Tell me everything you saw, Mrs. Carter." I did. Every detail. The man, the folder, the envelope, the look in her eyes. He listened without interrupting, his pen moving quickly across the page. When I finished, he looked up and said gently, "If there's something to find, I'll find it. But you should know this kind of work takes time and money." He hesitated before adding, "I'll need about $1,000 to start. Surveillance, document checks, background searches." $1,000. It might as well have been 10,000. That was my emergency fund, the money I'd kept in case I got sick, in case I needed medicine, in case I couldn't pay rent someday. But what's the use of saving for a future when your son is already lost to you? I withdrew the money the next day. When I handed it to David, my hands shook, not out of fear, but because it felt like I was holding the last of my strength and giving it away. He promised to call me in 2 weeks. 2 weeks that felt like 2 lifetimes. Every morning I woke up thinking about that envelope. Every night I prayed I wasn't losing my mind, that what I saw meant something, that maybe I wasn't just an old, bitter mother. And then the call came. "Mrs. Carter," David said, his voice unusually serious. "We need to talk. I found something. And it's not good." We met that evening in the same cafe. When I walked in, he already had a folder on the table, thick, heavy, stuffed with papers. My stomach turned. He didn't waste time. "What I found," he began, "is serious. Very serious. Olivia Harris has been manipulating your son since the day she met him, emotionally and financially." He opened the folder. Inside were documents, bank statements, screenshots of messages. "Daniel gave her all his savings," he continued. "Over $100,000. She told him she was investing it for them, but all the accounts are in her name. He's not listed anywhere. If they separate tomorrow, he gets nothing." I covered my mouth, feeling the air leave my lungs. "He doesn't know?" David shook his head. "No. She shows him fake reports, fake numbers. He thinks everything's going perfectly." He turned to another page, text messages between Olivia and her mother. "Look at this," he said. "This message is from before they even married." Olivia wrote, "Daniel is perfect, stable, kind, and doesn't have family who interferes much." My heart dropped. There it was. The proof that everything, every smile, every sweet word, had been part of a plan. David kept flipping through the pages. "She's been paying her family's debts with Daniel's money. They're broke, Mrs. Carter. Bankrupt. The house they flaunt is mortgaged to the ceiling. The cars, the jewelry, all borrowed or unpaid." He showed me more papers, bank notices, unpaid loans, transfers. Olivia wasn't rich. She was drowning. And she had found my son to pull her back to the surface. I sat there in silence, staring at the evidence. Every instinct I had ignored now screamed inside my head. Every humiliation, every cold smile, every lie, all of it had led to this. I asked softly, "What do I do now?" David's eyes softened. "Be careful," he said. "If you confront her too soon, she'll twist it against you. She's made Daniel believe you're the problem. If you want him to see the truth, you'll have to show him, not tell him." That night, I went home with a folder pressed to my chest. I sat at my small kitchen table for hours, reading every page, every word, until the sun came up. The pain was unbearable. But beneath it, something else began to rise, something sharper, colder, stronger. Resolve. For the first time in years, I felt alive. Because I finally had proof. And I was going to use it. For the first time in months, I slept without tears. Not because the pain had gone away, but because it finally had a purpose. I woke up that morning with one thought echoing through my mind. They want an apology, then they'll get one they'll never forget. Daniel had told me to come to their house on Saturday night, to apologize to Olivia in front of everyone. He thought he was humiliating me. He had no idea he was setting the stage for his own awakening. I opened David's folder again, carefully studying every paper. Bank transfers, fake investment files, messages between Olivia and her mother, it was all there. But it wasn't enough just to show Daniel the truth. I needed him to feel it. To see with his own eyes what kind of woman he had chosen over me. So I called David. "I'm going to that dinner," I said quietly. "And I want you there, not as a guest, but nearby, ready when I need you." He hesitated. "You're sure you want to do this, Mrs. Carter?" "It'll be ugly." I smiled sadly. "It's already ugly, David. I'm just turning on the lights." Over the next few days, I prepared carefully, not just the evidence, but myself. I practiced every word I was going to say. I looked at myself in the mirror each morning, forcing strength into my reflection until I believed it. I even took out my best dress, a navy blue one Daniel had bought for me years ago for his graduation. The fabric had faded a little, but I ironed it neatly and polished my old shoes until they shone. It wasn't about vanity, it was about dignity. On Thursday, I visited Linda. She could see something different in me, the calm before a storm. "You look peaceful," she said. "I'm done being quiet," I replied. "People like Olivia thrive on silence. They mistake kindness for weakness. Saturday night, I'll remind them that I may be old, but I'm not blind." Linda smiled, tears in her eyes. That's the Helen I remember. I left her place feeling lighter than I had in years. Friday evening, David came by to go over the final details. He showed me a small USB drive. "I've put everything here," he said. "Copies of the bank statements, message logs, photos, everything she's been hiding. If she tries to deny it, plug this in. It'll play automatically on any TV or laptop." I held the tiny drive carefully, as if it were made of glass. This little piece of metal carried the power to break years of lies. David gave me a reassuring look. "She won't see it coming." I smiled faintly. Good. People like her never do. The next day, I woke early. I cleaned my apartment, watered my plants, made tea, small rituals to calm the storm inside me. Every sound felt sharper that day, the ticking of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant noise of the street outside. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, taunting me, testing my patience. As the evening approached, I dressed slowly, buttoning my faded blue dress and brushing my hair into a neat bun. When I looked in the mirror, I saw not a broken woman, but a mother who had survived too much to fear a spoiled liar. At exactly 7 p.m., I took a cab to Daniel's house. The drive felt longer than usual. The city lights flickered past, blurring through the window. I clutched my purse tightly. Inside it, the folder and the USB drive waited like silent witnesses. When I arrived, the house glowed with warm light and laughter. Cars lined the driveway, luxury brands, polished and proud. I stood outside for a moment, taking a deep breath before walking in. The butler opened the door. "Good evening, Mrs. Carter." His tone was polite but indifferent, the same tone he used when escorting guests he barely recognized. Inside, the living room sparkled, gold accents, expensive candles, champagne glasses clinking. A dozen people mingled around, dressed in their best. At the center of it all stood Olivia, glowing in her ivory gown, playing the perfect hostess. Daniel stood beside her, smiling proudly, the devoted husband who thought he'd married grace itself. When he saw me, his face softened. "Mom, you came." "Yes," I said calmly. "I told you I would." Olivia turned toward me, her smile perfectly rehearsed. "Helen, I'm so glad you could make it." Her tone dripped with mock sweetness. I simply nodded. She gestured toward the table. "Dinner will be served soon. Why don't you take a seat? I'm sure Daniel has something to say." He stepped forward nervously. "Mom," he began, "I know things have been tense lately. I think tonight is a good time to clear the air. Olivia just wants peace. If you could just apologize, we can put all this behind us." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me. I could hear the ticking of the grand clock on the wall, every second echoing through my chest. I smiled, slow, gentle, controlled. "Of course, Daniel," I said softly. "I came here exactly for that." Olivia's smile widened, triumphant. She thought she'd won. But she had no idea that the apology I was about to give would burn everything she had built. As I took my seat at the long table, I glanced toward the window. Through the glass, across the street, a car sat parked. Inside it, David waited, ready, watching, his phone in hand. Everything was in place. All that remained now was the truth. The dinner began like any other polite evening in a rich household. Soft music played in the background. The scent of roasted meat and expensive wine filled the air. Guests laughed, unaware that they were sitting inside a ticking bomb of truth. I sat near the end of the long glass table, across from Olivia. She looked perfect, as always, her hair gleaming, her diamonds catching the light with every movement. Every laugh she gave sounded rehearsed. Every touch on Daniel's arm was a performance. I watched her carefully, the same way a patient hunter watches their prey, quietly, without a hint of emotion. Daniel tried to make small talk. "Mom, I'm glad you came. You look, well." He smiled nervously, unsure of how the night would go. I returned the smile gently. "I'm well, Daniel. Very well." Olivia raised her glass. "Before we begin," she said, her voice ringing sweetly across the table, "I'd like to say how grateful we are to have Helen here tonight. Family means everything, doesn't it?" The guests murmured their approval, smiling politely. No one noticed the venom hidden behind her words, but I did. "Yes," I replied calmly, setting my napkin down. "Family means everything. It's why I'm here, to clear the air, as my son requested." Daniel smiled, relieved. "I knew you'd do the right thing, Mom." Olivia leaned slightly forward, pretending humility. "Whatever misunderstanding we've had, Helen, I truly want to put it behind us." I nodded slowly. "Of course. But before I apologize, I just want to say a few words, if that's all right." Olivia waved her hand dismissively. "Go ahead." I stood up. My hands were steady. my voice calm, but strong enough to silence every whisper in the room. I raised Daniel alone, I began. When his father left, I worked 2 jobs to feed him, to keep him warm, to make sure he never went to bed hungry. I sacrificed everything, my youth, my health, my dreams, just to see him smile. Daniel looked down, his face tense. Some of the guests shifted uncomfortably. I never asked for much, I continued. Just respect. Just love. But somewhere along the way, something changed. My son began to see me not as a mother, but as a burden. And that, my friends, didn't happen by accident. Olivia's smile faltered, just a little. She forced a soft laugh. Helen, I think you're misremembering things. No one here. I raised a hand gently, cutting her off. Please, Olivia. Let me finish. I promised an apology, and I intend to give one. The room went still again. Even the music seemed to fade. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small USB drive. I held it between my fingers like it was nothing, but it was everything. This, I said quietly, is my apology. Daniel frowned. What's that? Proof, I replied, of who your wife truly is. Olivia's face drained of color. I don't know what you're talking about, she said quickly, her voice trembling just slightly. Don't you? I smiled. Then perhaps we should all take a look. I turned to Daniel. Son, could you please plug this into your TV? I think everyone deserves to see it. He hesitated, confused. Mom, what is this about? Just trust me, I said softly. For once. Something in my tone made him obey. He took the USB and inserted it into the TV. The screen flickered, then lit up. One by one, images appeared. Bank transfers. Screenshots of text messages. Documents bearing Olivia's name. And finally, photos of her secret meetings, the man she'd met behind Daniel's back. The room gasped. Olivia shot up from her chair. This is ridiculous. That's private business. Private? I said, my voice cutting through her panic. Private accounts? Private debts? Or private lies? Daniel stood frozen, staring at the screen, his face pale, his hands shaking. Olivia, what is this? She turned to him, desperate. They're lies. She's making this up to turn you against me. But the truth was right there, glowing on the screen for everyone to see. The guests exchanged shocked looks, whispering among themselves. Daniel, I said softly, look at the dates. The transfers started before you were even married. She's been using your money to pay her family's debts. Every word I've ever said about her was true. You just refused to hear it. He looked at the screen again, then at his wife, the woman he had defended so blindly. His voice cracked. Tell me this isn't real, Olivia. Please. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her silence was answer enough. Daniel's shoulders slumped. He looked like a man who just lost the ground beneath his feet. I turned back to the guests, the same ones who had watched me with quiet pity when I walked in. You wanted an apology, I said quietly. So here it is. I'm sorry. Sorry for ever thinking I wasn't enough. Sorry for ever believing lies just because they were spoken softly. And sorry that it took me so long to stand up for myself. For a long moment, no one moved. Then I picked up my purse, straightened my back, and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard Olivia break down, begging Daniel to listen. I heard his voice, full of hurt and disbelief. But I didn't turn around. I had done what I came to do. Outside, the night air was cool and still. The city lights glimmered faintly, and for the first time in years, I felt weightless. When I reached the sidewalk, my phone buzzed. A message from David. Everything went perfectly. You did it. I smiled, a quiet, tired smile. Not of revenge, but of release. Because that night, I didn't just expose Olivia. I freed my son from the illusion that had blinded him. And, in a way, I freed myself too.